Oh, you put a reminder in. That's great. It says we are live. Hello,
yay,
hello.
Yay, we are live. Hello.
Hello, delicious humans. And
we're both taking a collective sigh of thankfulness, I think. Is that what your sigh is about? Thankfulness, or is that just mine?
I think gratitude, abundance, bit of love, a little bit of tiredness.
Yeah, all of those things just like extremely mixed together.
Yeah, so, and a bit of yay, thank you to everyone.
Yeah, I feel like we need to do one of those superhuman jumps off the front of a car in midair, you know, like the
Hello, everyone. How are you all? Are you all pumped after the Superhuman Summit? We have had an amazing time, haven't we, Michelle?
We have, and I've even been rewatching some of the speakers today that I didn't completely get to hear. So I've been full on in the zone right for the whole of today.
Awesome, awesome. So we thought we'd come on and do a little recap and a little touching in with all of you and saying, what were your key takeouts? What were ours? What did we love? What did it discombobulate us? What did it make us curious about?
Yeah, so feel free to put a post down in the comments there. If you've got comments about how you found the Superhuman Summit, or who your favourite speaker was, or maybe someone that you missed that you've still like to go and watch, then we would love to hear any and all of those comments that you've got. So that's great. What we're going to be doing is giving you a little bit of an overview of some of the key themes that came out of the summit, and also little snippets from a few of the speakers as well that were takeaways that we thought were worth revisiting today. Do you want to start with that, AJ? Some of the takeaways from the speakers.
Some of the takeaways. So thematically, and I think I said a little bit of this with the final speaker last night and kind of the wrap up. We had Jonathan Reams last, and I took 5 minutes at the end to just kind of thank all of our behind the scenes staff and team. So thank you to the Being More Human team as well.
Yeah. And can I just jump in there and say a massive thank you from me as well. I didn't get a chance to do that yesterday. So our team behind the scenes, we like to call our super team, and we have a group that we call Being More Human Awesomeness. And that's exactly what they are, a group of awesomeness humans that have been able to pull this off. So thanks, everybody.
They don't get more awesome than that bunch of women. They're amazing.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I kind of summarized a little bit last night, but what the themes where I really got out of it was there was a whole heap, and it's interesting post-COVID kind of, and as the world's still recovering from that, I got a lot about self-trust and about alignment. And so many people talked about alignment from their own perspective and in their own way, whether that was sciencey, spiritually, self-care. I know Belinda talked a lot about some rituals and things to come back into that place of self-love and care and nurturing. And so there was this whole lot around how much we get separated from source or separated from our own truth, and how do we step back in. There was also lots about nature and about just trusting the universe and, you know, working with the natural world, I think, as well, and not pushing so hard against things. There was a lot about zooming out to the macro and coming back down to the micro. And I kept saying, I loved Charlotta's little analogy of the glitter ball, the disco ball, and how that was kind of the cosmos and the universe. And we were all just one of those little fractals, one of the little mirrors on the mirror ball. And a whole heap of people kind of talked about that, and how what we do individually impacts the whole, and that if we raise our consciousness and we work on our self-care and our alignment, that can have a ripple effect for others. So I got lots of that kind of theme. What about you?
Well, I was just going to say, I think Christina did a really good job of that when she was talking from the individual through to the collective. I thought that was really great. A couple of the different themes that I noticed, there was a real theme about holism and about including each part of ourself into the one. And particularly with those guys like Anuraj and the other guys who are more techie focused speakers, even in the midst of the tech and the humanness, was this real focus on being holistic in the way that we choose to interact with tech and have tech in our life. And I really liked that interactive kind of view. One of the other ones, and I think you just touched on this, but I just wanted to kind of dive a bit more deeply into it, was about going inward. And I really loved the focus that people had about meditation and mindfulness and other kinds of really useful tools and techniques that we can put into place ourselves in order to go deeply inward to ultimately transform ourselves, because that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. And as a mad keen meditator, there, I was thrilled to see how much of that there was. And I think if I think back, Jade, Enrique, Alexis, Charlotta, Sally, Ekaterina, Christina did as well, Becky did, Belinda did, Marie Batchelor did, Michelle Crone did. They all talked about meditation and that going within, like every one of those speakers. So yeah, there's definitely kind of a resurgence of people, starting to do that.
What I would say to people listening in regards to that is, if you've never tried meditation, please give it a go. It's not hard. It's quite an accessible thing that you can try. There's no right way and wrong way to do it. So whatever you're doing or whichever way you're trying is perfectly fine. If you have tried it before and you didn't like it, what I would say to you is try it for longer. So sometimes we try something out for like 3 or 4 times and we decide we don't like it. In the case of meditation, 3 or 4 times just doesn't cut it. It's not okay to say that you don't like meditation after trying it 3 or 4 times. You really need to give it a good go, like I would say across a month, and doing it daily across the month. If at the end of doing it daily across the month, you find that it doesn't have any purpose for you, fine, stop. But what I would say is you really need to give it that much of a go to allow it to do work its wonders in your life.
Absolutely. What I also loved was this kind of return, like you were saying, to holism, but kind of almost a return to ancient wisdom. And so there was, we had a beautiful speaker, Becky, I think, that talked about Indigenous cultures. Marie Batchelor touched on that as well. Casey did, so did Charlotta. So many of them actually talked about, whether it was Aboriginal, Indigenous here, or whether it was other cultures such as Indian or American Indian. And there was lots, Buddhism, lots about the wisdom that comes from a lot of those ancient knowledges, and how we're somehow in lots of ways returning to that, and how that connection to nature and that connection to being grounded was so important. And I think a lot of them talked about, the higher we go in the sciencey stuff and in the spiritual stuff, how we also need to be grounded in what's practical and all of those sorts of things. And I loved that Belinda Wallace really gave some really practical gratitude practices and daily thoughts and little things to help you when you're in a crisis, to actually plan your little toolkits around those things. So I loved how it kind of went right up, but it also got really grounded, and it was modern kind of life and the technology, like you're saying, but coupled with ancient wisdom. And so it really has been the meeting of two.
It really has. And look, I loved what Richard Clayton and a couple of the others were saying. I think Marty Spiegelman also spoke about this. The whole, simplicity through the complexity. And there was a lot of talk about complexity theory, and no one expressly talked about quantum theory, but they talked about quantum theory without calling it quantum theory. So there was a lot of discussion about us being, disconnected from the idea of time and space. And I think those conversations were really important for me, because that's truly where, in my understanding, where science and spirituality meet, is in those particular conversations. And one of the highlights for me was listening to pretty much every single speaker talk about both science and spirituality. And what I would love to feel is that this summit in some way has been able to open our minds more to science and open our hearts and our souls more to spirituality. And I think if we've been able to achieve that, then, you know, that's a fantastic summit.
You're giving me chills. You're making me flap my cape. I like that.
But you're not here, so I can't give you a hug. Sorry.
Virtual. Yeah, so maybe we could go through some of the other comments or things. I know you have some themes. I'm just looking through. I've got written notes in front of me of some of the speakers and things. Enrique, who came to us from Arizona, I love that he uses brain games and, you know, really was combining left brain and right brain together in a lot of what he was doing, and that whole concept of music and sound and resonance and play, and how much play kind of became part of it as well, and lightening up around things, not getting so serious and hooked on things. And I love that he talked about trust is a journey, not an event, and that the human spirit thrives in the unknown. And so having this curiosity of not having to know everything in order, and that's again where that self-trust came, where can I sit on the edge of the unknown and play in that space. So I loved that.
Yeah, I love that as well. And I also really loved Marie Batchelor's talk. And I think, you know, she was having a conversation about interference and the kind of dark side of it. But what she was really, really talking about is how we can stay in our light, and how we can make sure that staying in our light eliminates any of that other negative energy around us or in our families and in our ecosystems.
And I think she was really not trying to strike fear in us, but to say, you know, we're incredible energetic beings, let's be more aware. So she was talking about, you know, genetically modified food and, you know, being aware of the environment that we're in and the mind wiping that goes on and the brainwashing that happens, and how can we do our own daily practices, again, through meditation, to keep cleaning ourselves and opening ourselves up to the light. And I know she talked a bit about some of the controlling entities and government and all of those sorts of things. But again, it came back to fill up with light and love and be your own best friend. So, you know, again, about we are already light, we're born as light. So we just need to remember that, take care of ourselves, practice spiritual hygiene, have fun and be joyful. You know, another person that is along those lines. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the definite themes that came out of the whole summit to me was how much we can actually do, like how much we can actually help ourselves, and tips that we can take on board and actions that we can take, and ways in which we are empowered to change our own lives for the better. You know, we don't have to sit around and wait. We don't have to sit around and you know, expect the doctor to fix us. We don't have to sit around and expect all these things from people around us when we have such incredible access to our inner power. And I think that really came through with each speaker in such a beautiful way.
And I think, yeah, I agree. And I think even people like Dr. Richard Clayton, that came from more of that academic approach, did talk about how much we're destroying craft and some of the ways we live. You know, and he gave examples of times and businesses and companies in the past that would allow you to make mistakes and to play again and have trial and error and try different things, and how teams worked as tribes and, you know, explored how they could work better together. And that's within our control again, right? That's within our control.
That's what I'm saying. I just feel like there was so much depth in that area of what we can actually do, that I just got off each speaker going, you beauty, I can do this, you know, I can make a difference, I can change something. And I really loved that tone was there through the whole summit. And I think one person that was particularly good, or two people that were great with that tone, was Casey and also Jade at the start with her opening conversation and the story about her life. And I really appreciated how personal she was. And how much she was able to talk about, you know, moving from the ego into a place where she's really accepting herself much more. And I thought that was just beautiful to see someone be able to have that conversation.
And I loved how she talked about some of the books, and a few people dropped books. I was jotting down books, and I've already ordered like 3 books as a result so far. And I know there'll be more when I go back through my notes, but she talked about Oprah's What I Know for Sure and Neil Donald Walsh's Conversations with God, and how those books had been, you know, really important, a time for her and a change. And also that she had really looked at how much baggage she was carrying and had done the work on herself, and done the work on being grateful and practicing gratitude. And I love that she even did the jumping, you know, if your backpack full of stuff, it makes it
and
hard.
that's really, you know, that's really in the spirit of taking true personal ownership. And if there's you know, one of the themes I think that we can all learn from, including me and including you, is around really taking extreme ownership for ourselves and for every part of who we are, and always realizing that there's more that we can do. You know, it's not a matter of not being satisfied. I'm fully into being satisfied and being calm and complete with your life, at the same time of being really genuinely interested in any new things that we can do to improve our lot or improve the lot of other people.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100% responsibility for everything. There was also the lovely Ekaterina from Ekaterina, who was in Paris, and, you know, talking about story and the power of story and the meaning we make from our life and our story, and how we as humans are meaning makers, you know, and that we look for connection in stuff. And so how do we build that connection, and what do we make stuff mean? Again, personal responsibility, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That was Alexis Nikki, sorry. Yeah, and she was talking all about meaning making and narrative intelligence, and that again kind of led back to some of the Indigenous cultures as well, where storytelling was such an important part of them passing on knowledge. And how do we do that in modern life? Because we're kind of doing it every day through social media and all the things that we're creating, because we're such creators. And that was the theme too, about how much we're creators, you know, that we're creating our own reality minute by minute, hour by hour.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the other thing, to be honest, that I really enjoyed, as much as the speakers, I just love the community. I love seeing people's comments and their smiley faces and their likes and their, you know, questions. And I think there was so many really reflective, thoughtful questions during the summit. Yeah. And you could tell, you know, that people were really genuinely listening and really wanted to find out more about whatever the question was that they'd asked.
And I also loved, like, then after Alexis was Jeff Marlowe, and so he was calling in from Cambridge, you know, and I loved, so that we had people from, a speaker from Hong Kong, one in Paris, America, you know, there was Cambridge, New Zealand, Adelaide, Queensland, you know, all over, and that people had similar experiences. So I remember Jeff talking about, you know, he'd had a breakdown in his 30s and, you know, had overworked kind of thing, and then had sort of a spiritual epiphany. There was a few people that talked about really going through, you know, a spiritual ascension that was fast. I mean, that's certainly where Marie Batchelor was after the death of her son, you know, and so there were so many people that had these similar stories, just in different life suits somewhere else in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one that jumps into my mind immediately is Constantine Giorgio's discussion, because what I loved about what he did, it was so practical. His talk was called From Lockdown to Liberation, and he was taking us through how he, you know, initially had all these different physical symptoms that were happening to him as a direct result of lockdown. And then he decided, so constructively and so proactively, that he would put himself inside his own personal retreat for, I think it was a 10-week period or something. And he's recorded all of the different changes in his brain waves and a whole series of other things that he's measured, like his KPIs for his retreat. And he was able to talk to all of that and really did a beautiful job of integrating the science and the spirituality into that conversation. So I really loved that. I got a lot out of that.
And I think that's where also, when we were talking about the macro and the micro, and that what happens for one individual happens for all, and that's where his experiment on himself has just as much validity as something that is done on a sample size of 100,000 people, you know, and that, you know, that was really relevant. And there was a couple of people that actually kind of talked about that. that, you know, it could be a tiny little experiment, but it could be something massive, but that they're still finding the same thing. And I think that's where Jeff said, we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. And so for me, it was a reminder of humanity to see all these speakers from around the world and all our viewers and participants who were also around the world. And I want to thank so many of them, and lots of people jumped onto so many of the calls, but that there was so much of this commonality, that we all had shared experiences, you know, from all around the world.
Yeah, if there's one thing that teaches me, and I get taught this over and over and over again in so many varieties of ways, it is that humans have far more in common than what we have difference. You know, at the end of the day, we all want to be loved, we all want to be cared for, we all want to be nurtured, we all want to have challenge in our life, we pretty much all want to have some kind of engagement in meaningful work in some way. There's, you know, if we started to list all the commonalities that we have as humans, and that's the other theme that came out to me that really struck me. I run a business called Being More Human, so I kept getting struck by this theme, was people asking, what does it mean to be human? And there were so many ways in which that same question, what does it mean to be human, was asked over and over again, and so many versions and varieties of the answer that I really loved that part of the summit, I have to say.
Michelle Richards is saying, great job, awesome variety of content. Thanks, Michelle. Yeah, we loved planning, actually making sure we got a diversity of speakers that gave, you know, very different views and came from very different backgrounds. And thinking about that, there was even Jonathan, who was our final speaker, Jonathan Reams, and he was coming all the way from Norway. So again, another different area of the world with a different culture and those sorts of things. And he was talking about William Blake, like English literature mystics that were studying consciousness and leadership way back, you know, hundreds of years ago. And that there is, I guess, there's always been this realization that we're, you know, human suits, but having a, you know, spiritual beings having a human experience. And lots of people, I think, talked about that. And that the soul, he said, was, how did he word it? He said the soul is a creative unit of pure awareness. I loved that. I remember him saying that, and all of the likes going off in Facebook land. But he also said, you know, change begins at home. Self-leadership is what's most important.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a good thing to leave everyone with, is that changing yourself, transforming who you are, is an eminently achievable task. And you only need a little bit of will and a little bit of want and perhaps a poke in the right direction from time to time. And you can be amazed at how quickly you can change your life. And when I'm talking about change your life, you can change your circumstances. You can change your employment or where you're working. You can change where you're living. You can change partners if that's what's required. It is possible to transform your world in a way that's unrecognizable. And it only takes you to want to do that.
Yes. And I guess also to wrap up, I loved Charlotta, where she said her definition of spirituality, because we were doing the Science and Spirituality Summit. And she said, well, you know, she talked about that in her mind, they're married, and that we will, you know, that love melts everything. So regardless of whether you've got a spiritual approach or a scientific approach, there's still this need, like you were saying, to connect the head and the heart, and that love somewhere in the middle will melt them. And Sally Anderson in New Zealand, who also, you know, I don't know how many people handled her talk, because she always overloads you with so much information. She's phenomenal. She's like a bomb going off.
It's fantastic. I really like her.
And so Sally Anderson said her definition of spirituality was trusting the unknown as much as the known.
Yeah, I love that. That is such a brilliant definition of spirituality.
Yeah, and that whole idea that science is about looking for evidence and following evidence, but that spirituality is trusting and then knowing that the evidence will show up. And so it's, again, that concept of just two sides of the same coin.
And science is the process of making the unknown known.
Yes, right. So there was just, that wasn't there. There was so much gold throughout. We're so glad people enjoyed the summit. We loved bringing it to you. No doubt we will do more again in 2021.
Absolutely. And I think it's and I'll have this conversation obviously with you, AJ, before publicly announcing anything, but I think it's really got me excited to do more and more work in this group and in this community. I think we have a brilliant community here, and we will definitely be having some conversations about how we can utilize that for everyone's well-being.
And support and serve you all, and send lots of love your way. So yeah, thank you to everyone. Thank you to Marlon and people who are behind the scenes and cheering us on as well. We love, you know, our special supporters, Nosh, and people who always send us little messages and comment on things. Yeah, it's been amazing again, as always. And we get so much richness out of it, just as you do. A reminder also that all of the talks are here in the Superhuman Summit group, and also have all been uploaded to YouTube. So you can go and grab and watch more if you need to, or if you want to share with someone one of the talks and you weren't, they're not in the group, you can share the YouTubes. So go and check out Human Power on YouTube, and you can watch replays there.
The other place that you can find all of the Superhuman Summit talks from the first summit, as well as the ones that you've just seen here in the second summit, is our Becoming Superhuman podcast. Yes. So feel free to jump on, and you can have it either by listening or by watching, whatever suits you the best.
Perfect for when you're going walking. And last but not least, we should probably mention the 12th of December.
Yes, we should, definitely.
A day of immersion. So this will be the second time we've run this. We ran one a few months ago, and it was phenomenal. The feedback we got from participants,
it was quite mind-blowing.
Well,
everyone jumped in and said, you know, gave their testimonies and everything, and they were so gracious and lovely. But obviously it had just this kind of superhuman impact on them.
Yeah, and I think you can never underestimate that power of community and going through a process collectively. And so the immersion day is via Zoom like this, but you're all on screen and you're all participating. So as opposed to seeing a speaker, you're actually participating and going through processes together. It's quite visceral. There is sound and all sorts of things, meditation. We will do a lot of immersive stuff together online. A lot of the themes that were talked about throughout this summit, we will be taking people a little bit deeper into those if you're wanting to explore and find out more. And what better way, because there's a special on to do with the summit. So it's super affordable, a whole day for under $100. You can't go wrong. And if you're in America or somewhere, even better, because our dollar's not so great.
Yeah, everyone from all over the world is very welcome to come and be part of the online immersion. And the other thing that I would say is, quite honestly, when we did the first online immersion, I did not expect it to have the kind of impact that it had. So that really surprised me. And the other thing I didn't expect Zoom to be so good at facilitating a human connection. And I think that really, really came through, particularly in the sound healing component of the online immersion.
Absolutely. So, yeah. And visualizations and guided meditations and everything that went on. So we'd love you to come and play with us for another whole day on the 12th of December, if you so desire. Yeah.
And the link's all through the summit group. So just scroll through. You'll find it in every speaker, and you'll also find it popped into the summit. Yeah. So jump in and grab your spot.
Thank you to my beautiful co-host. It's always great to play in this sandpit with you.
Namaste, madam. Namaste.
Namaste, my friend. Be well, everyone. Stay superhuman.